Most of what's sitting in your local garden center right now is already too late for the season. Not because the staff are lying to you, because nobody bothered to tell you that July isn't the end of planting. Mm, it's the beginning of the second harvest most American gardeners never get to see. 12 superfoods, container only, planted this month while your neighbors think the planting season is over and their hands are already off the trowel for the year. By September, your porch is producing food. By October, theirs is just sitting there, brown and finished, while you're still harvesting. Drop in the comments right now what state you're gardening in, because your zone changes everything about how these 12 perform for you, and I'll be calling out specific guidance throughout. Superfood 1, Malabar spinach. This is not spinach. Forget everything you know about spinach bolting and dying the second a heat wave hits. Bacilla alba was built for exactly the conditions that kill regular greens in July. It's a vine, thick, glossy, almost succulent leaves, and it thrives in heat that would send lettuce straight to seed. Where spinach gives up at 75 degrees, Malabar spinach is just getting started at 95. 1 cup of cooked Malabar spinach delivers nutrition comparable to regular spinach, vitamin A, vitamin C, iron, and calcium, but without the bitterness that develops when true spinach is grown in summer heat. It climbs, so give it a trellis or a tomato cage in a container, and it will cover that structure in weeks. Harvest the leaves continuously. The more you cut, the more it produces. The mistake almost everyone makes here is planting it in spring and wondering why it sulks. Malabar spinach does nothing in cool soil. It waits. Plant it in July when soil temperatures are reliably warm, and it explodes into growth within days. Hardy as an annual everywhere, but perennial in zones 9 and 10. Container size, a 5-gallon pot minimum, with the trellis anchored deep enough not to topple in wind. Superfood 2, okra. Here's a vegetable that most container gardeners write off before they even try it, and that's a mistake that cost them an entire summer of free food. Okra does not just tolerate July heat, it requires it. Below 85 degrees, okra grows slowly and sulks. Above 85, it takes off, producing pods within 2 months of germination. Clemson Spineless is the variety bred specifically for manageable container size and consistent yield, staying under 4 feet in a pot. A single plant in a 10-gallon container can produce pods every other day at peak season for 2 straight months. Each pod needs harvesting within 3 to 5 days of forming, or it turns woody and inedible. That's the mistake that costs people their harvest. They plant it, forget about it for a week, and come back to pods the texture of cardboard. Check it every single day during peak production. It takes 30 seconds. Okra is also one of the few vegetables genuinely suited to the exact stretch of summer most other crops are struggling through. While your tomatoes are stressed and your lettuce is bolted, okra is hitting its stride. That's not a coincidence. That's the plant doing exactly what it evolved to do. Superfood 3, purslane. If you've ever pulled this out of a crack in your patio and thrown it in the trash, I need you to stop right now, because that weed contains more omega-3 fatty acids per leaf than almost anything you could grow on purpose. Portulaca oleracea isn't just edible, it's one of the most nutrient-dense plants you can put in a pot, and it actively wants to grow in July heat that kills everything else. Thick, red stems, smooth, succulent, paddle-shaped leaves. It needs almost nothing from you. Drought doesn't bother it, poor soil doesn't bother it, full blazing sun is exactly what it wants. Harvest the tips continuously, and it keeps producing right through the hottest weeks of the year. Toss it raw into a salad for a lemony, slightly salty crunch, or saute it like spinach. The mistake here isn't growing it wrong. It's not growing it at all because somebody told you it was a weed. A single 6-inch pot can keep a family supplied with fresh greens through the entire worst stretch of summer, while everything else in your container garden is wilting by 2 p.m. Superfood 4, Egyptian spinach, also called malokia. This plant fed entire civilizations along the Nile for thousands of years, and it's nearly unknown in American container gardens today, which makes it one of the best kept secrets on this list. Corchorus olatorius produces dense, mucilaginous leaves similar to okra in texture once cooked, that are packed with calcium, iron, and protein. It loves heat the way Malabar spinach does, and it actually improves in flavor the hotter the weather gets. Plant it in a 12-inch container with rich soil, harvest the top leaves regularly to keep it bushy, and you'll have a steady supply for soups and stews for August and September. In Egyptian and Middle Eastern households, this plant is a staple. In American backyards, it's practically a ghost. That gap is your opportunity. Superfood 5, moringa. This is the plant NASA and nutrition researchers have spent the last decade studying, and it grows in a pot on your porch like it doesn't know it's supposed to be red. Dried moringa leaves carry more iron than spinach, more calcium than milk, and more potassium than bananas, gram for gram. In a single growing season, in a container, in a backyard in Ohio or Texas or anywhere with a warm summer. Moringa oleifera grows fast, sometimes several feet in a single season, and you keep it container sized by pruning it back hard. That pruning isn't a maintenance chore, it's how you harvest. The leaves you cut are the food. The plant responds to cutting by producing more growth, not less. In zones 9 through 11, it survives outdoors year-round. In zones 7 and 8, treat it as a seasonal container plant and bring it in before frost. The mistake people make is planting moringa expecting a slow-growing ornamental and being shocked when it needs constant cutting back. That's not a problem. That's the harvest. Superfood 6, sweet potato grown for the leaves, not the root. Most gardeners plant sweet potatoes hoping for tubers in October. I want you to plant them this July for something else entirely, the leaves, which are edible, nutrient-dense, and ready to harvest within weeks, not months. Sweet potato leaves contain significant amounts of vitamin A, vitamin C, and antioxidants. And in many parts of Africa and Southeast Asia, the leaves are the primary food crop, while the tuber is almost an afterthought. In a container, a single sweet potato vine will produce a continuous supply of tender leaves and shoots all summer long, and harvesting them does not stop the plant from also forming tubers underground if you leave it long enough into fall. The mistake here is harvesting too aggressively from one section. Take leaves from multiple vines spread across the container rather than stripping one vine bare, and the plant keeps producing without stress. Superfood 7, Roselle hibiscus. If you've ever had hibiscus tea, you've tasted this plant's calices, the part that forms after the flower drops. Hibiscus sobdorifer grows beautifully in a large container, loves full July sun, and produces a crop most American gardeners have never grown themselves despite drinking it regularly in stores. The calices are loaded with vitamin C and anthocyanin antioxidants, the same compounds that give the tea its deep red color. Harvest them about 10 days after the flower drops, while they're still tender, and dry them for tea or use fresh in syrups and jams. One plant in a 15-gallon container can produce a clean calices on the east coast of tea. Most nurseries sell this as an ornamental and never mention its food. That's the gap. 6 plants in, and I want to ask you something before plant number 8. How many of these 12 have you genuinely never heard of before today? Drop the number in the comments, because I want to know how much of this list is actually new information for the people watching, and it shapes what I cover next. Superfood 8, Malabar gourd, also called chayote when grown from the fruit. And this sprawling vine produces both edible shoots and a mild squash-like fruit, and it thrives in exactly the heat and humidity that makes July brutal for most other vegetables. Sechium edgel needs a large container, at least 15 gallons, and a sturdy trellis because it grows aggressively once established. The shoots and tendrils, harvested young, are tender and mild, used throughout Mesoamerican and Asian cooking the way Americans might use green beans. The fruit takes longer, often not ready until fall, but the leaves and shoots feed you the entire time you're waiting. That's the real value here. You're not waiting for one harvest. You're eating continuously while the main crop develops. Superfood 9, chia. The Aztecs called it the running food, and warriors carried pouches of it on long journeys because the energy density was unmatched for the weight. Salvia hispanica grows beautifully in a container through summer heat, producing small purple-blue flowers that eventually set the seed you're actually after. 2 tablespoons of chia seeds deliver 5 grams of protein, 10 grams of fiber, and omega-3 fatty acids, along with an almost unbelievable ability to absorb up to 12 times their weight in water. It needs full sun, minimal water once established, and a container at least 12 inches deep. The mistake people make is harvesting too early, before the seed heads have fully dried and turned brown. Wait until the flower heads are crisp and brittle, then cut them into a paper bag and let the seeds fall free on their own. Superfood 10, amaranth, grown for greens. The Aztecs valued amaranth so highly that the Spanish banned its cultivation specifically to break Aztec culture. That's how seriously this plant was once taken, and most Americans have never planted it on purpose. Amaranthus species grow fast in July heat, producing edible leaves within weeks that taste similar to spinach, but hold up far better in summer temperatures. The leaves are rich in iron, magnesium, and lysine, an amino acid most plant proteins lack entirely. Harvest the top growth regularly to keep the plant bushy and productive, and it will keep regrowing through the hottest stretch of the year without bolting or turning bitter the way cool season greens do. So, a 12-inch container is enough for a steady supply through August. The mistake is letting it go to seed too early in a container, after which the leaves turn tough. Harvest aggressively, and you delay that entirely. Superfood 11, Malabar nightshade, more commonly known as garden huckleberry, or sometimes confused with related solanum species grown for greens in West Africa. I want to be specific here because this is exactly the kind of plant that gets erased from American gardening conversations entirely. How, across West Africa, related solanum greens are a daily dietary staple, providing iron, calcium, and vitamins that form the backbone of countless traditional meals. In American garden centers, you'll find almost no mention of them at all. Grown in a container, these greens handle heat well, produce continuously when harvested from the top down, and require almost nothing beyond regular water and sunny spot. The reason this entire category of food never made it into mainstream American gardening isn't because it doesn't work here. It's because colonial-era agricultural records focused almost entirely on crops with export value, wheat, cotton, indigo, and quietly left out the subsistence greens that fed the people actually growing food day to day. That knowledge didn't disappear because it failed. It disappeared because nobody who controlled the record keeping had a reason to write it down. Superfood 12, lemongrass. I'm closing with this one because it does something none of the other 11 plants on this list can do. It actively repels mosquitoes while producing a genuinely useful culinary and medicinal harvest. Symbopogon citratus grows into a dense, fountain-like clump in a container, thriving in the exact heat and humidity that brings mosquito season to its peak. The stalks are rich in citral, the same compound used in natural mosquito repellents, and the plant releases that scent simply from being brushed against. Harvest the outer stalks at the base once they're pencil thick, and use them fresh in tea, soups, or marinades. In zones 9 through 11, it survives outdoors year-round. In colder zones, bring the container in before first frost, and it will continue producing through winter indoors near a sunny window. The mistake people make is harvesting from the center of the clump. Always take the outer, mature stalks and leave the tender center growth intact, and the plant keeps expanding all season. Now, before you go plant a single one of these, 3 rules determine whether this works or fails. Well, 1. July containers dry out faster than you think. Heat this intense pulls moisture out of a pot in hours, not days. Every plant on this list needs daily monitoring during the hottest weeks, even the drought-tolerant ones like purslane, while they're still establishing their root systems in the first 2 to 3 weeks. Rule 2. Bigger containers survive heat waves that kill small ones. A shallow 10-inch pot in full July sun can spike to root-damaging temperatures by mid-afternoon. 16 inches minimum gives roots enough thermal mass to survive the kind of heat wave that would otherwise cook them alive. Rule 3. Harvest constantly or lose the plant to bolting. Nearly every leaf crop on this list, the Malabar spinach, the amaranth, the Egyptian spinach, the sweet potato leaves, responds to aggressive harvesting by producing more growth. Leave them alone and they bolt, set seed, and quit on you. The plants that get harvested the hardest are the ones still producing in October. Here's what I want you to sit with for a second. 12 of the plants on this list aren't hard to grow. They're hard to find information about. Half of them fed entire civilizations for thousands of years before anyone decided which crops were worth writing textbooks about and which ones quietly got left out. That's not an accident of history. That's what happens when the people keeping agricultural records have no financial reason to document the food that actually kept people alive. You don't need permission to grow Molokia in a 5-gallon pot on your porch. You don't need a garden center employee to validate purslane as food instead of a weed. The knowledge was never lost. It was just never written down by anyone with a reason to share it. Growing these 12 plants this July isn't just a gardening decision. It's choosing to feed yourself with food that has survived longer, traveled further, and meant more to more people than almost anything sold in a seed packet with a brand name on it. If this list gave you even one plant you're putting in a pot this week, subscribe right now, because next week goes just as deep into the plants nobody's talking about. And the gardeners who subscribe today are the ones whose containers look completely different by September. Drop a comment telling me which of these 12 you're starting with and what state you're gardening in. I read every single one, and your answers shape exactly what I cover next. Go fill a pot. July isn't too late. It's exactly on time.